Hey everyone, it's Sevy. New year, new abyss. So welcome to my guide on how to beat floor 11 and 12 of the 4.3 cycle. This time, we have the comeback of older bosses Thunder Manifestation and PMA, familiar Fontaine enemies, the Hydro Tulpa boss, and more. This guide will go over strategies and tips to hopefully help you have an easier run. Let me just flash some very general reminders before you tackle Spiral Abyss, which you can pause to take a quick read. This Abyss Blessing gives your active characters a damage bonus by obtaining crystallized shards, which can stack up to 3 times, and this is clearly geared towards Navia, but the presence of Geo enemies in some chambers can help you generate shards even without bringing a Geo character. Starting with floor 11, it grants you a 75% Geo damage bonus. That should give Geo mains, especially Navia owners, a considerable advantage, especially since some enemies have their own elemental auras which can help generate crystallized shards. Of course, you can completely ignore that too. For the first half, you want to bring elemental counters versus the first and second chamber enemies that have elemental shields and immunities. The third chambers are just mechs, so elemental counters don't matter there as much. For me, I'll bring the classic Chongyun national team. For the second half, there are Hydro mimics in the first chamber, so don't bring a mono Hydro team. You can take advantage of the mimics Hydro aura, like using Pyro to vaporize them consistently, or Dendro to generate Dendro cores. Bringing Electro or a Quicken team in this half can also be effective against the Jade Plume Terror Shroom, since Quicken reactions will disable it. It's not that necessary, and you can brute force with many types of reaction teams anyway, but for me, I'll be bringing an Aggravate team. Chamber 1 is another Defend the Monolith, and there's no timer, so just focus on the monolith's health. The first half summons waves of slimes in a clockwise pattern. When they spawn, they will first try to charge towards the monolith, but it's possible to aggro them if you attack them enough, which will help reduce the damage taken by the monolith. They're generally easy to kill before they damage the monolith that much anyway. Then simply follow the clockwise spawning pattern. Remember, this chamber has no time limit, so just focus on keeping them away from the monolith and try to get a lot of energy for your characters before it ends.
Spirit Blade, attack!
Rain outlines your fate. Rain Cutter.
A touch of frost.
In the second half, you'll start with 2 waves, each made up of a Hydro Mimic and 2 Specters. The Mimics will try to rush towards the monolith, but you can quickly kill or aggro them first. Using AoE attacks or crowd control abilities will also help you more efficiently kill them. Keep a bit of distance from the monolith though, so that when enemies attack you, they won't accidentally hit it. The third wave spawns 3 Mimic Boars that use ranged attacks or even charge towards you. You can attack them straight away, but try to keep a distance from the monolith to avoid collateral damage. Though if you're too far, they can start charging the monolith as well. Since it's generally easy to prevent a lot of damage against the monolith just by aggroing, crowd controlling, or quickly killing them, this chamber should be pretty manageable. Next up, this chamber starts with 3 sea creatures. I prefer going to the side to push one enemy towards the others, and the grouping can help you deal AoE damage more efficiently. It's mostly a matter of countering their shields or just brute forcing your damage. If you have an animo unit, you can also swirl their elements onto each other to help break their shields faster. The second wave has 2 Ruin Graders. I prefer going to one side again, which will bait the farthest one to walk or charge towards you and make dealing AoE damage easier. Dealing with them one by one is also perfectly fine.
Submit for judgment.
Witness the power of Tulpa.
In the second half, we start with 2 Hilichurl rogues. Again, I'll position myself at the side to either push one back into the other or bait the farther one a bit closer to group them up. Their attacks can deal considerable damage though, so be careful with dodging or shielding. You can also just deal with them one by one, and if you have enough DPS, it shouldn't take too much time. Then the second wave spawns 2 Ruined Drakes. If you focus on attacking one, the second will naturally just move towards you. If you can hit their cores while exposed, it will disable them and make them easier to kill. But it might be completely unnecessary if you have enough damage anyway.
Animal hypostasis emulation. I'll settle this. Odds revealed. Propagate. Animal test 6308.
For this chamber, you start with 2 mechs. Focus on the specialist mech since the construction mech will keep charging towards you and they will group together naturally to make dealing AoE damage easier. Be aware of both mechs' attacks if you don't have a shielder. The specialist mech can stagger you if you're not careful, and the construction mech has that prolonged spin attack that can be very annoying by interrupting you a lot. This last part has our Abyss regular Jade Plume Terror Shroom, demoted from its previous floor 12 to floor 11 now. Quicken reactions will make it fill its rage meter, then it will do a random raging animation. The best case scenarios are when it just stays in place, since the charging animation makes it move around a lot. But once it's down, it gets stunned and has lower resistances, so it gets much easier to kill. If you don't trigger Quicken on it, then just doing enough damage is also perfectly fine. If you're using a team with Pyro, be careful when it gets burnt, since that will make it summon fungi to help it in battle. Moving on to floor 12, the first half has the PMA, Ruin Graders, mechs, and, making its Abyss debut, the Hydro Tulpa. The Ruin enemies and mechs have no elemental considerations, so your team mainly depends on your counter elements against the Hydro Tulpa. Having a shielder will really help, especially versus the Hydro Tulpa, since it can hit hard. But if you're only using a healer, be good enough with dodging and iframing its attacks. It's immune to Hydro damage and freeze, and has an innate Hydro aura, which we can use to our advantage. For example, having a Pyro DPS will let them trigger Vaporizes consistently, or a Navia team means you can generate crystallized shards more easily. For me, I'm bringing the same Aggravate team as before, but it'll transform into a Hyper Bloom team versus the Tulpa, since my Dendro Traveler can constantly generate Dendro cores from its Hydro aura. The second half now has the Thunder Manifestation, Geo-based enemies, Electro Lawachurls, and Aramite Beastmasters. The Thunder Manifestation is immune to Electro, so use other elements as your main damage sources. It has an innate Electro aura, which you can also exploit, like by triggering overloads with Pyro, Quicken with Dendro, and so on. The Geo enemies have Geo armor, and the slimes are immune to any damage until you remove their armor, which are best dealt with by blunt attacks like Geo or Claymore attacks, or certain abilities that deal a lot of blunt damage. But you can just brute force with other reactions and regular attacks if you have enough DPS anyway. For this half, I'm also using the same Chongyun National team from floor 12. First up is the PMA, which is mainly a DPS check. It telegraphs its attacks pretty obviously, so just keep on dodging them if you don't have a shielder. If it flies into the air, you can still continue attacking it if you have a ranged unit.
I'll settle this. Propagate! Animal test 6308.
As you wish, main.
Absorption test. Swirl, Mark 2! Spring Force! Lightning Purify! Yeah!
After around 40 seconds, or at 30% HP, it enters its defensive mode and creates 4 Ruin Sentinels which have their own attack and movement patterns. Look for the one with the ring aura. That's who you need to kill to make the PMA vulnerable again. If it's the Dorito, it dashes away from you, so as a trick, keep it between you and the PMA so it'll dash towards the PMA. This way, it's easier to start hitting the PMA as soon as the Dorito is dead. If it's the crab, then it'll be very annoying to kill due to its shields, and you can probably just restart if you feel like it's slowing you down. If it's the snake-like one, you can actually bait it beside the PMA since it will try to teleport towards you, which can also make it more convenient to kill the PMA.
Midnight Ven.
Animal test 6308. Enhanced animal module. Ha! Out of my way! Dissipate! Stand clear.
Once the PMA is vulnerable, then just kill it ASAP.
Repeat, scatter, propagate. Absorption test.
Next is the Thunder Manifestation. It stays in the center for at least a while before it starts moving around, so you can do your first setup and rotation there while it's staying put. Afterwards, its attacks are a lot of RNG and can be easier or more annoying depending on what you get.
Let's light it up.
When it starts doing this electro screen attack, you want to dodge out of it at the last second. This way, you don't end up running around too much and you don't get any damage from it.
Everybody stand back!
It also summons this electro square that follows you around, so you'll want to iframe, shield, or run away if ever it appears. In this run, it actually didn't zip around the arena so much, saving me a bunch of time. But unfortunately, you may have to reset if it ends up doing a lot of teleporting attacks just so you can get a better time.
Know my sword! Let me weave you a verse. Nice and spicy!
A touch of frost.
For the second chamber, this first half comes in 3 waves, so it's a bit of a DPS check to get through each of them quickly. The first is the construction mech. You can try to edge bait it for easier crowd control, but it's also very important to either iframe, dodge, or shield through its spinning attacks, otherwise you can get staggered a lot and lose a lot of time.
Enhanced animal module 75. I'll settle this.
Try to keep it near its spawn point as well to better position yourself near the spawn point of the next Ruin Guard, which is nothing new and quite straightforward to fight.
Spring force! Scatter! Lightning terrified!
Last are 2 Ruin Graders. Like in floor 11, I'll just stay beside one of them to let the farther one approach me, and if they charge towards you, that can bait them towards the edge. Then it's a matter of using AoE attacks to kill them simultaneously and quickly, or just one by one if you can deal a lot of single target damage anyway.
By royal
In the second half, we start with Geo Slimes and Spectres. The Slimes are immune to damage until you break their shields, and the fastest way to break them is with blunt damage or Geo attacks. If you don't have those, it's possible to brute force it, but that can take more time. Grouping them with an Animo unit or by edge baiting will also help you break their shields simultaneously for a faster run. Once unshielded, they'll be straightforward to kill along with the Spectres. Next are 2 Geo Bishops. You can either start attacking them right after spawning, or you can bait both of them to jump towards you together for easier grouping. Either way, it's always better if you can hit them simultaneously while grouped together for a faster time.
Submit for judgment.
rain outlines your fate. Let's light it up!
The last wave is 2 Geo Lawachurls. They have increased resistance while their Geo armor is up, which can again be broken with blunt or Geo attacks. Their attacks can also hurt a lot and interrupt you, so be mindful of dodging or shielding.
From whence you came,
No, my sword! Grain cutter!
swift and merciful. Submit for judgment.
Teamwork is dreamwork! Let's light it up!
Now we have the new Hydro Tulpa boss. Survival is your first priority, and having a shielder really helps a lot for uninterrupted rotations. Even then, be wary of your shield breaking since it can hit hard. Thankfully, its attack combos have recognizable patterns, and it telegraphs them pretty clearly, like when its arm is about to swing or when circles appear on the ground. With some practice, you can try to predict its hits and dodge accordingly. It summons mini-me versions of it every 13 seconds, so try to destroy them as well. Otherwise, they will both merge and buff the main boss's attack and resistance. Generally, it's a matter of staying alive while consistently damaging the Tulpa until it's done. As I said, my Aggravate team now becomes a Hyperbloom team thanks to the Hydro Tulpa's innate Hydro Aura. Exploiting this Hydro Aura to trigger other favorable reactions like Vaporize or Crystallize can definitely help make this fight a whole lot easier.
I'll settle this! Wings of darkness! Animal hypostasis emulation! Propagate! Dissipate! Absorption test! Out of my way! Ha! Spring force!
Midnight Ventus.
For this last half, we get 2 Electro Lawachurls for the first wave. Just like dual bosses before, you can edge bait them for easy grouping. Dodge and iframe their attacks accordingly, and even if you have a shielder, be mindful as they can still break your shield if you tank so many hits. Pyro, Cryo, and Dendro are the most effective on their Electro armor if you want to break them for easier killing.
Everybody stand back!
Submit for judgment.
Eat this! Body and vessel, brain outlines your fate.
Last are two Eremite Masters, and in this case, it generally doesn't matter much which one you target first. Though, the Dendro one can summon a Prison Barrier, which can be dangerous or time-consuming, so you can prioritize disabling or killing her first if you want to avoid that. These Eremites can summon pets, and while those are active, the Eremites themselves have increased resistances. Getting rid of the pets first will temporarily disable the Eremite Masters and lower their resistances, giving you a great opportunity to finish them off. Or just focus fire on the Eremite Masters, and it's likely you'll also kill their pets in the process if you have AoE damage. And that's it for this Abyss cycle. Let me know what you think of the enemies in this round, if there was a chamber that you found particularly difficult or annoying, and what teams you used this time. If this video helped you out, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon. Take care!
Benny's adventure team.